Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Wendy Cromash. Welcome to today's Levy Lecture. We are lucky to have David Chack here with us today to talk about women in comedy. Let me just make a couple of announcements that you will need to hear, and then we will get started. So I hope you all had a good summer. We are happy to be back with our bi-monthly Levy Lectures. Thanks to the Levy Senior Center Foundation for providing the infrastructure and support for these lectures. Without them, we could not be here. I also wanted to let everyone know that we are going to be using a lot of video clips in this webinar. And David and I have gone through a technical rehearsal. He has practiced this. Everything's queued up. However, technology can be unpredictable, and there may be some brief lags with a couple of the clips. They might be slow getting started, but none of them are very long. So please have patience. And I say that they're not very long because if anything is really bad, we'll just skip it, or that'll be, we'll move on. The other thing you need to know is that because we're talking about comedy and comedians discuss all kinds of topics, there is going to be some very harsh language, lots of curse words, lots of body parts named. Nothing will be left to your imaginations. So if you are easily offended, if this is going to disturb you, you may want to mute those sections or just cover your ears. But the clips are funny and it's completely worth it to watch. And David has great expertise to share with us. David is a professor at the Theater Arts Department at DePaul University. He's also the director of ShPIeL, and he's very active in the drama community in Chicago, as well as in Louisville, Kentucky, as unlikely a location as that may seem. Without any further ado, David, welcome back to the Levy Lectures. I'm going to take myself off camera and I will see you on the other side.
Okay, great. And I want to thank Wendy and the Levy Center so much for not only having me back, but really I was looking at some of the other programs that you were presenting. I went online and looked up some of the other people. You have such incredible people. Wendy, you do such a great job with this as well. So I want to thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here, really, and also to be with so many people sharing this. And yes, it's true that we're going to be doing a little bit of what's called blue, working a little blue here. But a question that I like to ask at the start of it, and let's use this as a way to investigate the humor that women are doing and why they do what they do and what it is that makes it funny and what it is that brings out the ideas that they want to bring out, is there is quite often a reason why people work blue. It's not just to get a funny laugh, although maybe some comic performers do it just to kind of get people revved up, or they're working with an audience that's much more rowdy and boisterous, and it's late at night and there's a lot of drinks and they're Cafe Wa, or they're, at some place in, Chicago downtown, and they want to get people revved up for the kinds of humor that they want to do. But there's also, I really do mean this, there's a deeper reason for it as well. It goes directly to who they are, to their identities, to their culture, to their ethnicity, and in this case, to them being women. And we're going to see a very wide assortment of comic performers today. And we'll see Jewish comic performers, African-American comic performers, Asian-American comic performers, what could be considered white Christian comic performers. And there is certainly, or are certainly differences between all of them. And that's something to bear in mind as well. What are the differences? And then what are the similarities? And what are the ways that they continue to take themes and carry them forward even to this very day? And that's one of the things that I'd wanted to make a point of in this talk is, what is the arc of women comic performers from the time period that I'm going to start? I'm going to start around vaudeville period, and then up until this very moment. In fact, we'll end on a movie that's either it came out or it's just about to come out with Tiffany Haddish and Billy Crystal. So, hang on for your seats. I'll warn you a little bit if you need some warning about where the blue material is going to come in. And we'll start the look at women comedians and how, if you can't stand the heat, just get out, In any case, let's start with one of my favorite comic performers from vaudeville, and that was Fanny Brice. And Fanny Brice, coming from a strong ethnic Jewish background, she was born in New York. She went into vaudeville. She's known for being in the Ziegfeld Follies. I'm sure a number of you have seen Funny Girl. In fact, Funny Girl is about to be remade. And oh shoot, I just blanked on the name of the person who's doing it. I'm sure Wendy knows, or she can look it up, and we'll tell everybody later. But they're going to do a new Funny Girl on Broadway coming up. So Fanny Brice is shown in that story of being this really vivacious, this charismatic performer. And women were not often seen in this way. Often, if you saw women performing in vaudeville and in minstrel shows, they were perhaps doing pretty much the same thing that the men were. They were performing ethnic types, or they were doing some double talk, maybe even doing some clowning, but they weren't doing the kinds of things that Fanny Brice did with her body, with her gestures, with her facial mannerisms. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to go to share screen, and then I'll discuss it a little bit more about her, because it's so interesting that even though we're looking at a routine that goes all the way back to the 1920s, although it's on film, so it was filmed later, still this is a very famous routine that she did. I'll see if I can enlarge the screen. We were able to do it before, and get it so that you can see it a little bit more clearly. And this is a routine that she did where she played a ballet dancer performing in Swan Lake. And then she goes off and becomes an ugly duckling. And we start to see how she is this gorgeous, kind of elegant dancer, but then she not only goes off as an ugly duckling, but she also goes off in a kind of caricatured Jewish way where she uses her nose. And when she sings, and I didn't show a clip from that, but she sings in a very Yiddish accent. And the ethnicity of who she is as this swan is really portrayed even more for her as a duckling, as an ugly duckling who gets snagged by the arrow. I guess that might even be Cupid. So what is it that she's performing as a woman who's actually not unattractive? I've seen many photographs of Fanny Brice when she's with the Ziegfeld Follies, with these beautiful chorus girls, and they come down and they sing these songs about, how men love them and how they're supposed to be, as beautiful as being able to be in a magazine. And then Fanny Brice comes down and she looks like she's pregnant. And all of a sudden you see this large belly. And that's what we saw in the play Funny Girl. And in fact, she did do these comic routines making fun of the quote unquote beautiful, glamorous woman. She's not just portraying a woman in a kind of comical way because she's making fun of being a woman. What she's doing is making fun of how the perception of women is. Now, the irony is that Fanny Brice wanted to be seen as a beautiful woman as well. And when her audience latched on to the fact that she was always playing these caricatures, she played Baby Snooks, and she played this, like I say, the ugly duckling as a ballet dancer. And she also played up her Jewishness in a lot of routines. She then decided that she didn't want to look so Jewish. So she had the operation of all operations that Jewish people have sometimes, a nose job. And as Dorothy Parker said about her, she cut her nose to spite her race. So, and then she got an infection, and it was, she had to have it broken and had to have the nose job again. So what we're seeing in the theme, and I'm going to get to the next video, the theme that we're seeing, though, is how women are playing on the expectations of how they're supposed to be perceived. And this is what Fanny Brice does so brilliantly and draws us in her comic way, and then uses the ways that women are supposed to be beautiful. They're supposed to look like they're gorgeous ballet dancers. They're supposed to look like they're in Glamour magazine. They're supposed to look like they have the perfect, white Anglo-Saxon face. And then she makes fun of it. And in a sense, through making fun of it, is basically doing a critique on us wanting that, on us believing that that's the way women should be. So I'm going to go now to one of the great African-American performers in the early time, and this is Moms Mabley. Moms Mabley lived from 1894 to 1975, and she also started in vaudeville at the same time as Fanny Brice. She was in, because of racism, she was in minstrel shows that were Black minstrel shows. She was in a circuit of performances that were done throughout the country called the Chitlin Circuit. This is almost equivalent to the same thing as the Borscht Belt that Jews were in. And she traveled around to different hotels and to different nightclubs and to different venues that Black people could come to. And she would perform her comedy there. So let's just see a little bit. I'll go to share video. Oops, I lost my video. I'll go to share screen, and we'll see a little bit of Moms Mabley. Let me set this up for you as we go to the video. And here she is talking about the things that she's told, but they're not true. And everybody's always telling her fairy tales. And she has to know, and they have to know, that she's not going to fall for it. And that the things that they're telling her are basically not true. Here she is. I'll see if I can go to a larger version of it. Give it a second. See if it does it. There we go. And here's Mom's Mabley.
When they sent for me to come down to Washington, they had some business they wanted me to tend to down there. They sent for me and sent me an airplane ticket. Now, I ain't scared of an airplane. I'm no square, but as you young children say, it just never moved me, you know, to ride in no airplane. Sure enough, no sooner than I got in the plane, they strapped me down. The plane ain't got up no ways hardly for something would clunk up in my head like that. I ain't heard nothing since. Both ears stopped up. Oh, I was so sick. I said, honey, the stewardess comes. I said, honey, my ears is all stopped up. She said, here's some chewing gum. I chewed that. That ain't unstopped them. I got right limp. I said, do something for me, honey. I'm dying. She said, drop your jaws. And I misunderstood her. They grounded me in Baltimore. Yeah, they took me on. But outside of an airplane, Luther, play that piano for him and tell him that number where it tells you about something else that Mom don't have played. Go on, Luther, play it for him. Now, I guess everyone has their aggravations, especially in certain situations. Now, remember, I don't know what you children's might be, but here's one thing that kind of aggravates me. For instance, company happened to drop in. Especially if they've been drinking too much gin. I say, now listen, if you're my friend, don't sit on my bed. Oh, now don't get me wrong. It's not that I think that your clothes ain't clean. And you know, Mom, I ain't never been mean. But there's a chair. Sit there. Don't sit on my bed. I always was taught that chairs was made to sit in and beds was made to sleep. You're liable to get my blanket out of line, rumple up my sheet. Oh, it's not that I think that it looks so hot, but it's mine and it's all I got. In fact, I don't care if it ain't nothing but an army cot. Don't sit on my bed. Mattress start to getting all lumpy. Springs won't bounce no more. Sides will start sagging and slats fall on the floor, and you know that's a drag. Then you go home feeling all happy and everything and leaving me with an aching head. Listen, Ben, if you're my friend, don't sit on my bed. In other words, don't crouch on the couch, son. I don't like it.
So here we have this very engaging Mom's Mabley. Probably people remember her from the Ed Sullivan Show. And back then, she was known for doing a little bit of blue humor and kind of making fun of herself and making fun of not being very smart. But in fact, she was a brilliant woman. And she also, here in this routine, says, you're not always going to be able to fool me because I'm looking for the truth. And you're telling me that I can ride in an airplane and everything's going to be all right. Well, I'm telling you, I'm scared to death and my ears are all stuffed up. And you tell me to drop my drawers because she misunderstands the woman who's not from the South, who's probably white flight attendant. And she thought she meant drawers when in fact she meant jaw. And of course, they kick her off the plane because of that. But she's making fun of herself lightly as well. But then in her song is about how you think you can just come over and you think you can just be with me and you think you can just, be my friend. And then what do you want to do? You want to sit on my bed. What is the bed, sit on my bed, a metaphor for? It's not a metaphor for just, hanging out with somebody and sitting on my bed. It's a metaphor for coming on to her, for maybe taking advantage of her, for, like in the old Big Mama Thornton song, you ain't nothing but a hound dog, prowling all the time. And that's what's in that song as well, which is a great song also about how women have to keep fending off these men who think they have the right. They, are entitled to sit on my bed. And through metaphor, and she doesn't go directly into blue humor here, but this is what happens later in women doing blue and playing blue. And we're going to get to that now. Let me make sure my video is there. Where did I put it? Hold on 2 seconds. Oh, there it is. I see it. We're going to get to a Jewish comedian, Belle Bart. And some of you may have heard of her or may have had her records. And she was known for doing blue humor. Oops, I keep doing that. I want to go to share screen, and I will. And here we go. But Belle Bart was known for doing blue humor, and this was part of her ongoing connection to Jewish humor and to Jews being in the Catskills and performing there and performing at nightclubs. Here she is at a theater in Massachusetts called the Frolic Theater back in the 60s, but she started these performances in the 1950s. So here we go with Belle Bart, and she's mixing it up and kind of taking the themes that Moms Mabley played with, and she's taking it just a little bit further. Let me see if I can enlarge it, and then I'll start it. Is it there? You probably can see it, but I can't. Here we go.
David, we can't, we only see you right now.
Oh, okay. Thanks for telling me.
Sure.
Give me a second.
And Beanie Feldstein was the name that you were trying to remember before, the funny girl.
Exactly. Okay, let me just get to this though. I'll try share screen again. Supposedly it's there. And God willing, we'll get there. Can you see her now, Belle Bart? And this is from her album. And she also did some of the early, I'll try to expand it again. And she did some of the early comedy albums in the late 50s and early 60s.
How come all the Irish girls go for Italian sausage? I wouldn't know, sweetheart. Where do you get the check, you? I know a few Irish girls that don't go for Italian sausage. They go for kosher beef. Right, sweetie? Isn't that nice? I never feel old until I look at you. I was built like you when I was 6 years old. Isn't she pretty? My nipples are bigger than your tits. God, I thought you didn't understand English. And I'm sure you didn't have time to. I think before she didn't hear me, right? I say don't knock it if you never tried it. And, I don't knock anybody. An obstitute is a prostitute that's destitute and an institute. You're not listening to a star. Hey, Billy, don't you sit with your ass to a star, I'll bury you. That's my doll, Billy. And I want to thank you for the lovely flowers you sent me last night. I don't know if he loves me, he wants to bury me. He sent me a wreath and it said, what did it say? In memoriam? What did it say? Indecorium? Peace. Oh, yeah, it's been a long time since I had a good peace, baby. You sure didn't say piss? This is one of the greatest followers of ShPIeL. Are you after my body or after my talent? Because I have both. As a whole, I'm all right. And if you could fill my hole, you'd be all right. With your mouth or your jadoo. I don't know where I get these lines. Oh, I'm so gorgeous. Shut up, I'll bury you.
Okay, so give me a second here. So here's Belle Bart, and she's kind of now going into women not only being careful about their sexuality, but actually how women can own their sexuality, that their sexuality is something that's very much a part of who they are. And then she layers onto that ethnicity, her own Jewish ethnicity, other people's ethnicity. What did she talk about? Irish girls are longing for Italian sausage. You know, that's a euphemism for you know what. And then she's also saying, but sometimes they go for kosher beef. So we know once again that when she's talking about that kind of salami, she's not talking about the kind that you get in the delicatessen. And through these kinds of plays on words, through the ethnicity, she also uses a lot of Yiddish in her act. She stands up for herself as a woman. She's saying that this is inherently who we are. And you're trying to tell us or perceive women as being a certain way. Well, you know, you want to see us as dainty or someone or as people that will just do whatever it is you want us to do just because you deserve it. Well, maybe you don't. Or maybe I want it and you better be ready for me. And here we see this kind of theme coming up in women comedians over and over again. And as we get to people like Joan Rivers and Phyllis Diller, we see this developing even more. And I'll get to them in a little bit. But I want to show a Jewish woman comedian who maybe many of you don't know. Her name was Jean Carroll. And she was so successful. She started out on Ed Sullivan and other TV shows, but then she went into, she was, so popular that she had her own TV show. And she started out her show with a little song, just like Belle Bart does, and really, used that kind of cabaret format, but then went into her act and in her comedy, talking about some of these same themes, but does it in a slightly different way. So I'm not going to explain that yet. You'll see that. And let's go with Jean Carroll. Once again, let me know if you can't hear it, and I'll do my best to bring it back. Here we go, Jean Carroll. Can you see her there?
Yes,
I'll
we can see her.
take that as a yes. Great.
Yes.
And let's see if I can expand it, which is always a little bit better. And here she is in one of her early performances on, I believe this is Ed Sullivan.
It's wonderful for me to be in love. Why, it's nothing, Hank. I don't want to sing, I want to talk about love. Love, what is love? Does anybody know? Well, that's a moot question, isn't it? So I asked Moot. And I asked Moot. Come on. So Moot, you see Moot? Moot, he's such a smart fella, and he's my first boyfriend. Oh, I was crazy about Moot. I went with Moot for, what did I go with him for? I don't remember now, but I really liked him. I liked him, but our romance was one of those triangles. You see, he and I were both in love with him. Well, anyhow, I said, Moot, how do you know when you're really in love? He said, Jeannie, you'll know because you'll feel so funny inside. You'll feel sick. And that's what happened when I met Jack. Jack asked me to marry him. And Jack, just looking at him, he was such a hunk of man, 6'2" and a solid 80 pounds. Oh, and he had the most fascinating eyes. They kept watching each other. And every time Jack came near me, I got hot and cold all over. When he kissed me, I broke out in a rash, and I got sick to my stomach. I thought thought, gee, this must be love. I never felt so sick in my life. So I married him. And you know what I found out afterwards? It wasn't love. I was allergic to him. Oh, but let me tell you something about this Chack. It's so funny the way I met him. You see, I was standing on a corner, as usual, and he walked by. Well, I dropped my handkerchief. He heard it and picked it up. And don't laugh, it was a very loud handkerchief. You know, purple, pink, blue, with yellow and green polka dots to match my car. So anyhow, Jack asked me to go out, and I never went out with strangers, but he convinced me he was no stranger. He'd known himself for years. So we went out, and let me tell you something, he was a real sport. Money meant nothing. Nothing. He didn't have any.
Okay, so we'll stop that there. But I really encourage people to see some more of her work and some of her acts on YouTube. She was a fascinating performer. Not only did she have that fast-paced, sleight of hand, playing on words, spritzy kind of humor from the Catskills, but she also was so intelligent and she started out as a dancer. She didn't go into comedy right away. Then she also sang as part of her dancing routines. And then she went into comedy. She was Jewish. Originally, her family was from France. They moved to London during the war. She grew up there as a child. Then they moved to New York. And she got into a marriage where here we're kind of hearing her tell jokes about it. But in fact, her marriage was an abusive marriage. And she had kids with her husband. The husband was kind of not involved in the marriage, and she raised them and still had a career. And a lot of people say that the TV show, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, is actually more about her than it is about Joan Rivers or Phyllis Diller or some of the other women comic performers at the time. And that Jean Carroll presented a very different look for a Jewish woman or for a woman comedian. And she didn't really bring her Jewishness that much into it, at least not the same way that Belle Bart did. But she presented this woman who was, not afraid to look attractive, not afraid to come out in a beautiful dress, not afraid to be herself and who she liked to be. She would talk about things like later on that Joan Rivers talked about, like shopping and shoes and, having, things given to her, jewelry, credit cards, whatever. But she still was quick, she was intelligent, and she also presented her life on stage. And this is more of what we're seeing now in humor as well, and in women's humor, is that women are presenting their own lives in a sense, and gets even expanded upon even more by Joan Rivers. It's done almost as a confessional kind of talk, like almost woman to woman. You know what I'm going through. Share it. I'll share it with you, and you can share it with me. And this is what Joan Rivers, and we'll get to her in a minute, was so adept at. So let me just get out of this screen. Give me 2 minutes, and we'll go right into Joan Rivers. And I'm going to show a little bit of a documentary on women comedians. And this is a slice from the part about Joan Rivers, and it gives her background, and it gives, in a sense, the underpinnings of why she did the humor that she did. So let's hear from Joan Rivers in her own voice, and about the humor that she then made so, ubiquitous, because other women and other women comedians played off of her. And really, to some extent, she was there first.
My mother came from St. Petersburg, very high Russian society. And then the revolution came, and they had to get out. And my dad came from Odessa, very poor. So poor that over there, my dad was put in an orphanage. I was just aware of the war. And I remember the end of the war, because it was Very exciting. VE Day. And then we moved to Larchmont. There were no Jews at all. It was very WASP and very country club, and there was Larchmont Yacht Club. And then my dad started having services in the Larchmont firehouse. I remember them coming to my parents' house and helping them plan a Larchmont temple. My dad was one of the founders. My dad was a physician. He had the largest practice in Brooklyn and Queens. And when a woman would come in, a prostitute, she would never say, I'm a prostitute. My dad would say, what do you do? She'd say, I'm an actress. So when I said, I want to be an actress, lights went off, bells went off. My parents wanted us to marry doctors. It was all about the security of the husband who was a professional. When I got out of college, I got married very quickly. And it was a miserable marriage. I had done everything that you were supposed to do. I had graduated from college, I had made a very good marriage, and it hadn't worked out. I said, now I'm doing what I want to do. And I sat down in front of the television set, and it was the Johnny Carson show, and I saw Dick Gaudier's act, and I copied everything he said. I just took the act. And there was an agent named Irvin Arthur, and I got him into a little place, and I did the Dick Gaudier act. And at the end of it, he said, that's very nice, and Dick Gaudier really does it well. So I thought, uh-oh.
Joan would come to my apartment straight from her parents' house. And I remember you always had a coffee thing and a dime. And you'd say, can I use the phone?
Always agents. Can I come down for this? Can I audition for that? And then John and I had this act, and a lot of it was Dreyfus material.
They worked quite a bit in the Catskills where everybody hated them. Absolutely hated them. We would go to the Catskills, and they were used to, you know, so my wife, please. They were used to that. So here comes John, and yes,
We had straw hats.
And
We've never seen you before, that kind of an act. They would just hate us.
they're in the middle of doing your little arm thing. Yes, they're doing that. And the old people are like, oh, yeah. Oh, we have to watch this nightmare in front of us.
It was a nightmare. But you got your timing and you got your legs. It was a great training ground. When I first started out in Greenwich Village, I had my own act. I was working the Village with George Carlin and Richard Pryor, Bill Cosby, all these wonderful men. And I was the only female. I never thought about it. I mean, these were my group that you'd all go around and sit around at the bitter end and then Cafe Wa and do your pieces.
You know, we stay up till 3 in the morning. That's the real showbiz.
And your idols were all comedians, and you knew everything they did, and you would say, isn't this brilliant? Look at this line, the analyzation of it all. I was starting to get a few little bookings at a place called the Duplex. The first ones that really laughed at the weird things I said were always the gay men. All strong women have a large gay following. I think they just get it. The gay table gonna do anything. Gays love strong women. They're not intimidated by us. And we have the same sensibility as to what is funny and what is not.
Those audiences loved her, absolutely loved her. Her stuff was pretty personal.
Stuff that would work in the Village, which was, I don't know, I was dating a professor, and while I was engaged to me, his wife became pregnant, so I figured he wasn't sincere. That was one of my jokes, which had been true. I would do that Friday night to the gay men. They'd go, funny. Then I'd go Saturday and do it to the Borscht Circuit Jews, and they'd go, what? She's dating a married man? I was living in the Barbizon Hotel for Women, and my dad went upstairs and dragged me out. They just thought I was ruining my life. They couldn't accept that this is what I was going to do, and this is all I could do. It's a calling.
Joan Rivers.
I was myself on stage. A divorced, Jewish, smart college graduate, not particularly attractive girl on stage.
The worst thing in the business, as far as I'm concerned, is that you can't meet single men. And that's because people, see like a happy comedian, and they don't realize that comedians have feelings. Tickle us, we laugh. Prick us, we bleed.
And I was telling them about my life.
When I said, I was desperate. My parents had a big sign saying, last girl before the thruway. I mean, that's how desperate I was. I went out with anybody.
My mother would turn around during the show and say, it's absolutely not true. Absolutely not true.
Her act was heightened reality, but it was not at all in the area of the Borscht Belt humor, flooding the airwaves.
One thing about my wife, she likes to keep pretty. She stays up to date. She went to a beauty parlor the other day to get a mud pack, and for 2 days she looked beautiful. Then the mud came off.
It was mostly men, and the put down of women was there. And it had nothing to do with your life, the life of people that age. It had nothing to do with it. She's so fat that you don't learn anything from that.
She wrote a joke for me that I still use to this day.
I'm educated. Why should I kill myself? Why should I cook? Do you ever stop and say to yourself, why me? Some days I'm lying in bed, I say, why me, Lord? The Lord wanted me to cook, he would have given me aluminum hands. Why me?
I remember calling her up, and I said, all right, if God wanted me to cook, my hands would be what? What would my hands be? And she said, me aluminum. And you go, of course. Of course.
These hands were meant to hold charge cards. Look at that. Perfect. Perfect.
That's Dreva's joke. It's made a lot of ladies laugh.
Okay, so we'll stop that there. And I wanted to play a good chunk of that because not only do you get a chance to see Joan Rivers' work, but you also get a chance to hear in her own words what it was that she wanted to portray, the kind of woman and the woman that she was, and the obstacles that she had to get through. She was one of the few women at that time in the 1950s and 60s that was doing comedy. That wasn't considered to be a woman's profession. Jean Carroll broke through, Phyllis Diller broke through, Lily Tomlin broke through. They were all there at that time, but very, very few others did at that time. And Joan Rivers really paved the way. And she started a style and a way of doing her comedy that wasn't just to spritz jokes, as her friend said there in the documentary. It wasn't Henny Youngman, and Henny Youngman and others were so denigrating to women. Instead, what she did was be confessional. Yes, she did it in a way that was slightly caricatured and sometimes really over the top. And she also would put down her own body, and she would do a lot of jokes about her body and about anorexia and that kind of thing, which I don't think necessarily is something to joke about, although Gilda Radner took it when she was doing her humor, and she used it as a way to kind of build people's self-esteem and try to build young girls' self-esteem. And Joan Rivers, I don't think quite did it in that direction. But still, we see the path-breaking way that Joan Rivers took women's comedy and being an ethnic woman, a Jewish woman from her background, and made that part of what comedy could be. And Phyllis Diller, we'll see a little bit from her right now. Phyllis Diller was not Jewish. A lot of people think that she was because she was part of, this group of so many different comic performers. Give me a second. Let me find the video and see a little bit from Phyllis and the kinds of things that she did and how, in some ways, she was similar to Joan Rivers, but also different. Let me go to share screen, and this should work. Allow it to get a little bit larger. And here we go. See if I'm in the right spot. And we are. Here we go.
Bang. Rolls home loaded to the gills. Very funny. He's got these gills. I don't know what they are. And he drinks like a fish. Oh, he gets so high, he won't drink without a net under him. You could chin yourself on his breath. So he comes home loaded to the gills, puts the car in the garage backwards. Well, that shot the heck out of my map. So I come out of the house the next morning, happy as a lark, with a hanger in my mouth. Drove out the wrong end of the garage. Took the scenic route. Through the knotty pine. Turned onto a one-way street that wasn't going my way. Everybody in America is coming this way except me and one other woman. I love that old broad. She was following me. In fact, she had driven through our garage. Darn good thing I opened it up for her. Because she was dragging a fence. And a chaise lounge with a kid on it. And I don't think it was her kid. As I got news, he didn't want to go. And you know, it's amazing how upset people get in traffic. You'd think they had never before seen a woman with a hanger in her mouth. And a little bit of knotty pine on her car. Followed by a perfectly normal old broad dragging a fence. And a chaise lounge with a kid who's a little upset. One man said, "Lady, you ought to have your license taken away." I said, "I haven't got one."
Okay, so we'll stop there. Let me get out of share screen. Okay. And what we see is Phyllis Diller now playing off of a lot of the different ways that women have been. She's using her body in a way that maybe is out there and garish. Her hair is teased up. She looks, you know, a little bit more flamboyant. But if she wants to be that way, why not? And people thought of that as her being clownish. I don't think of it as her being clownish at all. I think it's her about being out there, about being proud of herself as a woman. And to some extent, she makes fun of her body as well. And this is something that women comedians have to come to terms with quite often in their work, especially as they allow their own identity as women to come through. But she also talks about her husband, Fang, you know, and makes fun of him and makes fun of how he treats her and how she's going to take charge of the situation. And she winds up being a stronger woman in performance in many ways than Joan Rivers does, at least early on in Joan Rivers' career. Later on, Joan Rivers, there was kind of a moment in her life, not only when her husband committed suicide, but also when she didn't get on the Johnny Carson show, and she had thought she was going to be the replacement for Johnny Carson, and she didn't get it, and she was horribly hurt by that. And to some extent, that led to the depression and even probably to some extent to the suicide of her husband, Edgar. But she then changed into a comic performer that was much more aggressive, that was much stronger on stage. It wasn't going to take it from anybody, you know, and would just say to everybody in the audience that, you know, come on, let's talk. And she's going to tell them exactly how it is. So now I want to move to, let me see what I have queued up. Hold on 2 seconds. I want to go, and this is getting to the ethnic part again, and once again about the body, but I had mentioned that I was going to do a little bit from Gilda Radner. Gilda Radner, originally from Detroit, went up to Canada's Second City, and then also came down to Chicago's Second City, trained there, and then wound up on Saturday Night Live. And did all of these different characters that came out of ethnic characters. And ethnicity now is starting to be appreciated, has started to become part of popular culture and popular entertainment. She takes it a little bit further. So let's just jump into Gilda Radner. Oops, sorry. I keep clicking on the stop video instead of share screen. And we'll go to Gilda Radner now and this kind of spoofy commercial that she does. A little bit of Gilda there, and there's much more we could do on Gilda. But the point I'm trying to show is now how she inverts and takes how women are being perceived in their bodies, that they're supposed to be able to be attractive, and in this case, supposed to be what was back then called the Jap, the Jewish American princess, and she just explodes that and throws it out at the audience and takes it on full force and playing this kind of Jewess and advertising jeans. It reminds me of that old commercial, the Calvin Klein jeans commercial, you know, nobody comes between me and my Calvins. But she's also talking about something else, which is quite serious. She's talking about anti-Semitism, and she's talking about girls and women who are anorexic or bulimic, and how they purposely diet and starve themselves in order to fit into these jeans, in order to fit into the clothing that clothing designers design for them, and in order to show that this is another form of torture. This is another form of making girls into how men want to see them. And I don't know if people remember back in the 80s, there was this phenomenon called the Jap phenomenon. And at the University of Syracuse, for instance, there's a well-known incident at the time where the cheerleaders came out on the floor of a basketball game, and everybody in the entire stadium, maybe not everybody, but you know, almost everybody just started yelling, Jap, 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 Jap. And it embarrassed not only the women that were coming out, but everybody who was in the audience that was Jewish. Because everybody back then knew what Jap meant. So Gilda Radner, once again, being the courageous comedian that she was, and she's even more courageous later after she gets cancer, she takes that head on. Okay, I want to get to a couple more things, and then we'll wrap up and take questions. And one of them is this now, something that's a lot more blue than what we've done up to this point, but it brings in women comic performers that I think are wonderful, that are modern, that are up to date. And let's just go into it. They do say the word fuck a lot, so I just want to warn you for that. And but I think they're doing it in the service of something that's really important, which is, give me a second, let me find it on the screen here. They're doing it because they're also concerned about how women, and this is kind of headed up by Amy Schumer, they're concerned about how women are being perceived. And also they take it quite personally, because they're not just concerned about how women are perceived, but they're concerned about how women comics and women performers are perceived. So let me enlarge this. Give it a second. And here we go. This is, oops. Oh, okay. It's reloading. So maybe, hopefully we won't go through a commercial, but sometimes that every man wants. And what is this one thing that Patricia Arquette said? She said she was turned down for a role because she was too old to play Larry King's wife. I mean, you know, come on. So here they perform this ritual together, the kind of, you know, speed Julia Louis-Dreyfus on her way. But really it's done in a kind of fun and creative way. I think what we're seeing here are women doing creative things now to be themselves, to comment on what's going on, but also then to have more control over their performances and over what they can do. And this is what we see also in Ali Wong. Ali Wong is a current American comedian, actor, and writer. She's noted for her Netflix stand-up specials, Baby Cobra and Hard Knock Wife, both of which received critical acclaim. She is also known for her leading role in the 2019 film Always Be My Maybe, which she produced and wrote with her co-star Randall Park. So let's see a little bit from her stand-up routine and how she takes on both ethnicity, let me make sure I have it, yeah, I think it's there, and also who she is as a woman.
And just keep on walking.
Okay, we'll stop that there. So here she's talking not only about her body and about being pregnant. Of course, women performers aren't supposed to be pregnant. They never get pregnant. You know, nobody performs when they're pregnant, but here she is doing it and also making fun of this. Mirrors exactly what we just saw with the last routine around Julia Louis-Dreyfus. And then when she says, you know, they're just supposed to disappear, that's Julia Louis-Dreyfus going off in the boat, just supposed to disappear and will never perform again because they're not the way they're perceived to be. But then she also takes on white privilege and does it in a, you know, somewhat non-direct way, but at the same time also, you know, calling it out. What kind of privileged person do I want to be? What kind of income bracket do I want to get to? I want to get to the sliced mango in Whole Foods that's sliced by a white male, someone named Noah, someone named, and she goes through all the different names of, you know, supposedly white males. So her humor is bringing up both the differences in income from people who are not white and also her way of showing that we continue to have these stereotypes. We continue to want to see women in certain ways. And one more thing before we get to questions or thoughts, I want to get to one more video, which kind of is trying to be more of a, you know, healing might sound a little bit overwrought, but a way to kind of bring ethnicities, gender, you know, together in a way that shows that there is a intersection that can breed creativity in humor and also still maintain a particularity and a pride in who you are, in your identity. And I'm going to show two fine comedians, Billy Crystal and Tiffany Haddish, who now have a new movie out. And I think people can see it now. I may be wrong, but because I haven't been checking the movies lately, but I know that it's about to come out or it came out. And here is a little bit of a Jane Pauley story about it, or was done on Jane Pauley's show. And we'll see a little bit of it. Let me actually go to large screen first before I do it. And here we go.
So I come in there just, you know, all me, and he's like, hey, and I'm like, hey, and then we clicked immediately. And as he's like telling me about the story, he's trying to pitch it to me, sell it to me, and I'm like, hey, you can stop talking. You had me at hello. I'm doing this movie. It's done. We're doing it. It's in the can, okay? We're at the Oscars. In my mind, we're at the Oscars already.
Even before Here Today, Tiffany Haddish was already a movie star.
We are so lucky to have you.
You're right. Y'all very lucky. Very, very lucky.
And her star got even brighter when she hosted Saturday Night Live, the first Black female comedian to do so.
Before I was in Girls Trip, I grew up in foster care. And I want to say thank you to anyone who paid taxes between 1990 and 1999. Because if you wouldn't have paid your taxes, I wouldn't have been standing here today. So thank you.
Her performance that night earned her a Primetime Emmy and made Billy Crystal sit up and take notice.
I saw Tiffany host SNL, and I said, oh my God.
You knew?
That's her. I just saw her do this, and then I found out about her. We got her the script, and then we met, and then here we are.
Of course, Billy Crystal has a few comedy gems of his own, from Meg Ryan's lunch partner.
Most women at one time or another have faked it.
Well, they haven't faked it with me.
To the voice of one-eyed Mike Wazowski.
Hey, let's talk more pain, Marshmallow Boy.
But in the new movie, two of the funniest people on the planet have to deal with a completely unfunny situation.
Who are they?
That's my family.
If they're your family, why do you have their names written down?
Crystal's character, Charlie Burns, is in the early stages of dementia, and she becomes his rock as his world starts to slip away.
Charlie, you can't be alone anymore.
If you ever need my help, I'm here.
I'm writing something, and I have to finish before my words run out.
And I know you've joked about where did I put my car keys, but there are moments when I really think, okay, am I headed down that road when I forget something? Do you have those moments?
Oh, yeah. I think you reach a certain age where you look for any little pebble in your shoe to go, what is that? What was that? Is this, uh-oh. Pass me the, and then you go, is this it? But hopefully not. But, we're all on alert because it's a terrible thing that's affecting more and more people every day.
In fact, dementia has touched both of their families, including Tiffany's grandmother.
It's sometimes she doesn't remember him. She's like, get away from me. I don't know you. And I'm like, you don't got to know me for me to love you. And it's hard. It's hard to see her slowly deteriorating. And over these years, it's been not easy.
No, sorry, it's going to go through an ad. But I just want to get to the other side of this because there's a really interesting, I can skip. Okay, hold on.
And speaking of family, a few years back, Haddish discovered that she had Jewish roots on her father's side, so she decided to convert. And in 2019, she made it official with a little help from a friend.
Tiffany, you had a bat mitzvah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I invited Billy to come, and then I was like, Billy, would you be willing to do my Aaliyah? And he's like, yes. And I'm like, yes.
To be asked to do one of the key blessings for her as she was about to read from the Torah was really an honor. And the fact that she asked me to do it really meant a great deal to me.
Because to me, Billy's like the uncle I always wanted, like the family member I needed to help me grow. I feel like I've grown so much because of him.
Whoa!
I didn't want for this to happen.
It didn't happen. Your little frail body would not be able to handle all these groceries. I'll break your back, then you die. Can't have that.
Here Today will open this Friday in theaters only. And for Billy, that's essential.
What is it like to sit in a theater and see your...
Okay, so then they go into talking about theaters opening for COVID. So anyway, we're basically going to end here. I hope people can see here today. I'm looking forward to it and see how Tiffany Haddish, I keep saying Haddish and Billy Crystal to some extent are bringing together a lot of the themes that I've been talking about and showing that they can respect each other, respect each other's identity, and even kind of intersect with each other's identity. Here, Tiffany Haddish takes on the Jewishness that's in her heritage and in her background. Billy Crystal as well is Jewish. And also Tiffany being Black brings that into her humor as well. And this is what we're seeing now is this intersectionality that's coming out more in popular entertainment, in performance, in theater, in films. You're going to see it more and more. And this is what we have to look forward to. And I'm telling you, I think this is really exciting. We're at a really interesting point in culture, and I don't see it as a threat. I see it as something that we're really growing into and becoming better connected to the entire world. So we're going to end there at this point. And any questions, thoughts? Wendy, you always have interesting questions.
Well, thank you very much.
I'm glad.
That was a lot of fun. It was very entertaining as well as educational. I learned lots of new things. I do have some questions though for you.
Great.
So I was interested in your original thesis that the women you showed are making fun of other women. They're making fun of the perception of women, the standards that women are held to. And I was kind of surprised because watching Joan Rivers and Phyllis Diller, to me, it portrayed a lot of self-loathing and negative self-image that they were using. They were, making fun of themselves to deflect. And they were successful, but I don't think, that negativity was ever far away. And especially with Joan Rivers, who it's well known that she had an addiction to plastic surgery, to the point where it was very destructive. And sadly, was the cause of her death. So I just, can you talk about that?
Sure. And, what you're saying isn't wrong at all. I think they were the product of their times. They weren't trying, Joan Rivers would be the first to say she's not the poster girl for feminism. And she never thought of herself as doing that. Although in the early part of her career, it's interesting, if you asked her what comic performer she modeled herself after the most, she would probably say, she would name, a number, I'm sure, but one of the top would be Lenny Bruce. And that's surprising in a way, because Lenny Bruce, he also died for a cause. He died to be able to be comic and speak truth to power and be able to use, 4 or 5 letter words, 10 letter words that you're not supposed to say on TV. But he also fought for civil rights, for social justice. He fought against anti-Semitism, racism, and all those things too. And Joan Rivers kind of felt like she was following in his footsteps in this early part of her career. But she also wanted to portray herself, and this is where it gets tricky, and she's not being, Bella Abzug or being Betty Friedan. She's being Joan Rivers, and Joan Rivers is talking about her own life. She's being personal. And I think the genius that she had was in her ability. I'm not talking about later. Like I said, there was kind of a shift after Edgar Rosenberg died, her husband. But in this early time, she felt like she was bringing women and other people into a kind of personal discussion, a personal talk. And that's why, possibly why she wanted the talk show so much. Although Johnny Carson wielded a lot of power and was basically, the person who decided who would make it in comedy. Yeah, go ahead.
That's true. But remember, the reason she made a catastrophic error, and in her career, she opted to go, I think it was Fox or an alternative channel. They offered her hosting a show at the same time that Johnny Carson would be on.
Yeah.
He felt that was a complete betrayal. She had been the regular sub co-host, and he had nurtured her, and he just could not believe it. He never spoke to her again. And the show was a failure. Edgar was fired from the show. She ended up being fired also. The show was canceled. And then Edgar committed suicide. But you can read her bio. She wrote a book about this. And she also, there's a wonderful movie. She did a documentary. She allowed a camera crew to follow her.
Yeah, with her daughter too.
She was the hardest working woman you will ever see. She supported a whole staff of people. She lived a very opulent life off camera, but she talked about the terror of looking at her book and not having any dates. She didn't have any gigs booked, and she was broke, and just what she had to do to survive. So yeah, but that's
to some extent, you've actually answered your own question, because here you see a entertainment landscape which wants someone, and I don't think you're exactly doing this, but I don't give Johnny Carson such a free pass. I mean, evidently he also came on to her, possibly they had sex together. I mean, there was a number of things. Yeah, I did a lot of research on her not too long ago, and he denied it, of course. And but this is not just the era, but we're still living in this #MeToo era. So I don't disagree with you, but I don't love her in her later career either. Personally, that's not the kind of humor I gravitate towards.
So let's talk about something else. You talked about, I think it was
Mom's Mabley?
No. I think it was a combination between Fanny Brice and Belle Barth.
I also see some good questions in the chat too, so I want to get to these too.
I will get to that.
Great.
So you talk about their desire to hide their ethnicity. I think there was a lot of pressure for Jews wanting to be successful in different fields to assimilate, and people they changed their names. You mentioned nose jobs. I mean, they made changes in their persona to fit in better, because there were quotas of where people could go to school, and there were covenants if they couldn't live in certain neighborhoods. So the restrictions were very real, and I'm sure it was as bad, if not worse, for African American and other groups. So a lot of the changes, I think, came from a desire to fit in, and so that was one.
No,
one point.
You're absolutely right. I mean, that's a great thing for us to think about, is the pressure that was on women, the pressure that was on ethnic groups of all kinds, not just Jews. I mean, Irish and Germans, and there were Dutch comics that were making fun of each other in vaudeville. And these were the things that ethnicities had to overcome. Black people had to overcome a lot. And in the more vaudeville times, I mean, you'd have to there were very few stand-up comics like Mom's Mabley. The others were in film. And I see a great question here about other women comics who also were in the early times, like, well, Toadie Field's not so early. She was also at the same time as Joan Rivers, but Mae West and Gracie Allen. I do a thing on Gracie Allen and George Burns, by the way, which is really, I think it's interesting because it also shows that intersectional thing that Billy Crystal and Tiffany Haddish are doing. And you see in George Burns, who was very Jewish, came from a strong Jewish background. His last name, I think, was Cohen, and he changed it. And then Gracie Allen, from an Irish Catholic background, bring together their Jewish and ethnic backgrounds. And she also shows an intelligence, even though she comes across, quote unquote, as a ditzy woman, she continually shows that she's quicker, she's there on the uptake, she knows what she's talking about, but doing it in this kind of roundabout and circular way, which makes the humor that the two of them are playing with, George Burns being the straight man and her supplying the jokes. And Mae West, you also see, is coming out strongly about sexuality and her, she knows a man, and when she asks him, are you happy to see me, or is that just a banana in your pocket? I mean, she was on Broadway in a show called Sex. I mean, you can't get more explicit than that. They shut it down.
What year was that?
It was the 1920s.
That's pretty amazing.
And then Mae West with Cary Grant, and the two of them in the films. I don't show her as much because she didn't do stand up, and I'm focusing mostly on that. Tony Fields she also had a big thing about her body and the way that she looked and her weight. And it's been said, and I don't totally agree. And personally, I'm not that much in love with Tony Fields' humor. Because I do think she's self-deprecating in her own body, but they said when she lost weight that she lost her sense of humor, and I think that's a sexist thing to say as well about women and their bodies and shaming them as well. But she tried to live up to some male ideals, and it's tricky. Lucille Ball is very interesting, and Carol Burnett as well, who I didn't bring up.
There were so many that we couldn't cover.
Right. Well, from the television time period, the days of the golden age of television, you start to see more women comic performers. You see Molly Berg, Mrs. Goldberg. You see others, and Lucille Ball fits in to the kind of genius of being physically adept and yet showing clownishness. She takes the things that she learned from people like Red Skelton and also on her own. And there's a wonderful, if people are interested in researching, there's a wonderful Dick Cavett show with Lucille Ball, Carol Burnett, and Lucille Ball's daughter. Now I'm forgetting her name, Arnaz, Lucy Arnaz, not Lucy Arnaz. Was it Lucy Arnaz? I think so. And they go into the difficulties of getting into comedy as a woman and what they were expected to do. And the three of them together are just incredible. Also, someone asked if there's a biography about Jean Carroll. No, there is not. I know someone who's writing about her, and she's a professor at Columbia College, and she has a great article in the foreword, the Jewish journal, about Jean Carroll. And she says, and the title of her article is "The Real Marvelous Mrs. Maisel." And she has this whole article about Jean Carroll, which is really cool. So anyway, yeah.
So one other point I wanted to bring up, when I think it was the Belle Barth, was she was kind of Zoptic woman? Yeah, okay. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure I had the right person. So she was talking very overtly about sex, not even euphemistically, but very overtly. And I was surprised, but it was the early 60s. The birth control pill came out and was approved by the FDA in 1960. And the feminine mystique came out in 1963. So things were happening. And I think, comedians, or all comics, reflect what's going on in society.
That's right. Great point.
I happen to think Tiffany is so genuine, and just when that Saturday night performance, when she came out with that gown, that was the dress that she wore to one of the award shows. And people kept telling her that you can only wear it once. And she was like, no, this was so expensive. This was like a mortgage payment. I'm wearing this. And she did. She kept wearing it because that was her value. And she didn't care what people thought. She's just very real. Very real.
I just want to, there's another question here, which is kind of very different, bringing in different people, which I didn't focus on. Judy Holliday and Eve Arden, very, very different kinds of performers, much more at the sophisticated, upper crust, white, Anglo-Saxon, making fun of that kind of gentrified look, which of course the Marx Brothers took through Margaret Dumont and made fun of that. But I don't go into them in this kind of talk because we're focusing mostly on, stand-up comics and performers and keeping it, kind of similar that way. But yes, great. Dorothy Parker is another one. I mean, she's not a performer, but a great writer as well.
I have one other question. For anybody who has not seen Ali Wong in Hard Knock Wife and Baby Cobra, watch them. They're filthy, but they are hilarious. And I recommended them to my mom, who enjoyed them. I'm always surprised to see how comfortable they are talking about the things they're talking about, saying the things that they're speaking. I know I could not do that. And I know it's an act that she's not like that in, her real life. But that also is pushing the boundaries of what women and girls can do. So yeah, it just
great.
Really...
Yeah. And someone also brought up Margaret Cho. I mean, she's wonderful. I love her humor. I think she's so funny. She's in a new Netflix movie with Eliza Schlesinger. Although the movie revolves around Eliza Schlesinger, there's a lot of Margaret Cho in it, and it's very, very good. And Eliza Schlesinger is also up-and-coming comic who's now starting to hit larger and has had a number of HBO specials as well. So, the field that we didn't really touch on Tina Fey and didn't touch at all on Amy Poehler. I mean, there's so much more that we could do, and the cultural landscape now is opening up more and more, and I'm very excited about it. I think the intersections of culture and ethnicities and identities now and the openness to it, as you said, Wendy, is now creating a whole new cultural zeitgeist, which I think is great.
I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay. David, thank you very much. It was
you're
great
welcome.
to see you. A lot of good comments. Let me just see.
Wow, what a great turnout.
Rita Radner. Yeah, they're just so many.
I know. Rita Radner, Elaine Boozler. I mean, I could have, especially at that time period, jumping off of Joan Rivers, Elaine Boozler and Rita Radner, see Joan Rivers as the forerunner of who they became. Exactly.
Right. Aquafina is a new comic and she's got, very good acting chops also. Okay. So this was very lighthearted, great entertainment. Thank you very much. Thank you, Levy Senior Center Foundation. In 2 weeks, we are going to learn all about the signs of the Chinese zodiac and why life starts at 60 in that culture. So
I should take that.
Yes, it's going to be a great lecture. And so we'll see you in 2 weeks. All the lectures through the end of the year are posted on our website, so please sign up. Thank you again, everyone, and I'll talk to you soon. Thank you, David.
Okay, you're welcome.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.